And our final presentation this evening, we're going to hear about plans to reinvigorate our CBD laneways. And John spoke earlier about the $1.4 million grant that we received, which we've got to spend by the end of December, I believe.
Yes, we do.
Yes, so we're under a bit of pressure to provide something there. I think December's the deadline. And the man that's going to be handling that for us is Wil Robertson. Not from Lost in Space fame, but from Castle Crag fame. Fabulous garden too, yes. And we've discussed that earlier. Will's got a bit of a gardener in his spare time, but his real job is, of course, managing the projects for the laneways, and he's going to be telling us a little bit about what's happening in that space. So over to you, Wil.
Thank you, Meg. Microphone on. Thank you, Meg, for that introduction and recognition of my gardening talents, amongst other things. This evening, I'll be presenting the Laneways program, which is one that's evolved over a couple of years. It's about recognising the laneways that we have within the CBD as providing a valuable service function, obviously of servicing vehicles and the businesses that operate within them, but also recognising them as the potential to have active pedestrian movement through them, making it safe for pedestrians, and understanding how changing our views and the way that these laneways operate can also support and assist economic activity and development within our CBD. So the purpose of the laneways is initially to change them from solely operating as a service function, but also recognising them as useful links and places within the CBD. We're challenged to be able to create new space. So we really need to be able to recognise the existing spaces that we have within the CBD as to how they can work for us and they can work for the benefit of our community in a safe way. So it's about improving the pedestrian wellbeing and welfare of people moving through those spaces, and they are quite active, the laneways that we have. There's limited access points within the CBD, and the laneways currently operate with pedestrians moving through them as well as service vehicles. So it's adding to the overall network of the way that people can move around the CBD and interact with the space as an environment. It's also creating an understanding of the reuse of these laneways that are currently sort of underutilised in some respect, and provide additional business growth and opportunities where we may be able to seek that sort of economic benefit that can come from how these lanes can change. So the laneways that we're operating with at the moment, a post office lane, so that creates a significant link from the interchange down into Westfield and into the centre of the CBD. So it has a very high level of pedestrian movement. Charlotte Lane, which is a little bit tucked away, and it's sort of mostly wrapped up around the Westfield Centre, but it also does form a valuable link that you can get into Hawkers Lane from Anderson Street there. Spring Place, which is currently operates as a major entry into a number of car parks and service areas, but there is that little shortcut that's called Spring Link that can get you from Westfield, Chatswood, through Spring Link, across Archer Street, and then across into the other shops, the more eastern side of the Chatswood CBD. And Mills Lane, which is really sort of a new lane that we had, which came from the creation of the development that sits next to it. And it links the concourse through to the Chatswood Chase. And that's it's probably the most down the track. It's more like what we're trying to create in a sense. So what are we doing in the laneways generally? What we're doing is moving toward having RMS, Roads and Maritime Service Transport for New South Wales, recognise them as what's being called a shared zone. And that's an area where people and vehicles have the capacity to be able to interact. You're pulling down traffic speed, we're removing the curb and guttering, so we're removing hazards and trip hazards. So it's a single grade area. We're putting a single surface across all of them, where we'll put pattern paving into those areas. We'll be introducing some smart technology current smart technology into those areas with what's called smart poles. So in addition to having things like Wi-Fi and CCTV, we can also measure valuable environmental data about how we're contributing and to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, how we're reducing heat island effect, and we're starting to reduce the temperature within cities. So we can start to measure that data over time and see how we're improving it. Pedestrians crossing over, we have what's called a continuous footpath. So at the footpath level, if you're walking up, say, Spring Street, you'll be walking at grade, you won't be stepping down a curb onto an area of vehicle pavement and then back up a curb at the other side. You'll be walking through as a continuous extension of the footpath, and that creates a threshold into the laneway. So it creates a definition, and it shows that it's a very strong pedestrian dominated area, and pedestrians have every right to be in that space, as well as vehicles crossing over to it. And we'll be reducing the speed limit within each of those spaces to make sure that it's safer for pedestrians with vehicles turning and manoeuvring. So the future, really looking at what they could be, and this is a couple of sketches from the Changing Lanes program that we put together. You can see Post Office Lane, improving the pedestrian welfare that's in there, making it a more attractive space, because at the moment it looks like a bitumen covered laneway, so making it look a little bit more like some of the work that they've done in Sydney CBD, and moving towards some of the activities that we've had in Melbourne, which is always famous for its laneways and so forth. Spring Place, looking for additional tree cover and softening some of the harsh built environment that's within that space. And Mills Lane, and you can see in each of these sketches the longer term aspiration that really would be desirable is for those spaces to take on a new and a different life, and the potential for either short-term closures for events or even longer-term opportunities to be able to create spaces for activity, events, outdoor dining, and so forth. So what's the program? Pardon me, we have a very ambitious program to deliver this. At the moment, we've been working with our traffic committee, Transport for New South Wales, RMS. We have a construction starting in the middle of this year. We have RMS support to move approvals toward seeking the laneway shared zone status in each of those laneways. And we've had council support in recent meetings with regarding that. We're working with business. We've been holding stakeholder engagement sessions, identifying the improvements that we wish to make, and talking about the sort of benefits that we can bring along, such as additional trading space, space for events, making sure that these spaces aren't cluttered and they have an open area so they can be used for different sort of programs, and creating opportunities for all sorts of new activities. And when's all this going to be done by? We're going to have a ribbon cutting in December for Spring Place as a significant change and a catalyst for the change. So all of the laneways will be constructed this calendar year. I saw that there were some questions that came up.
Yeah, I think you answered them along the way, which was terrific. Yes. Okay. So well done, you. So Wil, fantastic initiative. Very excited about getting our laneways activated. And I know it's complicated, right? Because you've got all these businesses backing onto them, like Post Office Lane is a good case in point, where you've got the rear of shops. Yeah. Often there's garbage collection and things. How do you work through with the businesses to try and get where council wants to go to reactivate these spaces and perhaps turn them into outdoor dining areas and places, pleasant places to sit, rather than the back of someone's shop that might be garbage focused?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. Just a little bit in there to look. Yeah. It is. In some respects, this is one of those initiatives that says, if you build it, they will come.
Right.
So ideally, what we need to do is so that businesses can see that we have made a change and we're making an effort, and we recognise that there's a front door and a back door. Everybody talks about how wonderful Melbourne is, and Melbourne had the advantage of having a boom situation 120, 130 years ago that created those sorts of activation within the laneways. We've got a little bit of a different situation in Chatswood because we really need these laneways at the moment to operate in a service function. So there's a combined output. It's really about looking at how they can expand their spaces, how businesses can look differently at what their service areas are, as opposed to somewhere to be able to park their car and unload a vehicle. It's still vital that this happens. And in some respects, you only need one or two people to start to make a change and start to do something. And you hope that other people sort of follow. They don't want to miss out. And we've got, as you identified, we've got Post Office Lane as a great example where one day I was walking down there and someone came out with a concrete saw and cut a big hole in their back wall. And that became another doorway into a business there. So that was a through link that was created. We have a strategy that says we want through links and we want activation of laneways. And lo and behold, without council actually making an effort in doing it, a business has seen the initiative and started to do it themselves. So we'd like to see that where possible, people are doing that. And we're seeing it in a few DAs in some of the other areas where people are having businesses and they're designing their businesses and their restaurants so that there's a front door and the potential to be able to have a back door. And then eventually they'll start to invade and take over those spaces and people will start to use them, because that gives businesses additional access to footfall. And it's all about how many people go past the front of your shop. And now it's all about the number of people that also go past the back of your shop. And that's valuable that you see and capture that. So it's informing businesses this is the case, and this is an opportunity for them to be able to take advantage of it. But it is important that we actually take the first step in the initiative and say, yes, we are improving these laneways and we're spending a significant amount of money and effort in improving them. And then ultimately we can have and hold and continue to have events such as the events that Sam's already been fostering in the CBD. And if you build it, they will come. The change may not be immediate, but I think the change eventually will be quite profound.
And you touched on events. Is that the plan then, to start holding events in these laneways?
Well, the laneways have already been a venue for significant events such as food festivals. Vivid, we always manage to sort of close them. John had mentioned previously about how we're improving the permit process and the approvals process through streamlining that so that it's a more straightforward exercise to try and do a temporary street closure, because we don't necessarily intend to close these laneways. Over time, they may take on a different dynamic as development activity starts to come along. But we do want to see events there. We've had local businesses interested in wanting to have events there and saying, how can we do it and how can we assist? So we're improving the process by which businesses can go through, have those permits approved and streamline it to some degree.
And I guess that's part of what your role too is, John, improving the way that people can apply, businesses streamlining it, cutting the red tape, shall we say.
Yeah, and we've been talking to some businesses about their requirements, their timelines, their lead-ins, and we're building that into a process so that we can meet those timelines and make the process a lot easier and a lot simpler and almost kind of repetitive in a way, so they don't have to start from scratch at each event, so that it makes it easier for them to be able to use that space.
Fantastic. Lots and lots of work doing. We've just got one last question coming through from Wendy Norton, Councillor Wendy Norton. She's asking about the Dine and Discover vouchers, Sam. Perhaps if you can have you answer that one there. Just curious about businesses outside the CBD. Are we assisting them with their Dine and Discover vouchers?
Yeah, so we're promoting and creating awareness throughout the whole of the LGA for businesses to register for Dine and Discover. The promotion is not limited to businesses within the CBD, but the figures that I gave today were based around Chatswood, just because of the type of presentation that we were doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So we are very much active in promoting people to not only use the Dine and Discover, but also if you're a business to register.
For a business to
fantastic.
register.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
So I did promise an hour and a quarter, and we're there nearly to the right time, which has been absolutely fantastic. What a terrific presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, John, Very insightful. I know you've still got a lot of work to do.
Thank you very much. It's been great to have the opportunity
Yeah.
to run through these.
No, absolutely fabulous. And of course, Wil, exciting space with Laneways. Sam with events. Again, hats off to the events team in very difficult circumstances, but you've really stepped up to the plate and still had a great offering for our community, which has been wonderful. And great also Ella, who has told us about the wonderful dashboard and really giving some solid empirical information to us all so that we can make decisions on businesses and what's happening in the city of Chatswood. So we look forward to continuing our conversation with the community on the last Monday of each month, imparting important information about what's happening in not only in the city of Chatswood, but of course the lovely city of Willoughby. And we look forward to speaking to you next month. Thank you.